Sure. Excuse me. Well, and that, I mean, that has been a very successful group in the past. I'm glad it's coming back.
We were going to launch it last year, and ended up kind of planning it, and we're going to launch it with the gay Catholic priest that came.
Oh, yeah, he was great.
But then COVID hit us, and all of our world.
And there it is. COVID hit us.
COVID came, and we all.
And you know, I had participated in that group quite a lot, and then I had kind of stopped whenever I went back to school, not just because the meeting times didn't coincide with, you know. So, but I'm glad to see it making a comeback.
I feel like, we keep hitting just like the governor's gay adoption ban for agencies, and don't say gay bill, essentially the bathroom bill.
Yeah. Tennessee, unfortunately, has a long history of egregious legislation across a variety of.
They don't discriminate on who they're going to discriminate against. They're just happy to do it.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Monitoring any online comments or questions. So if any of those come in on the microphone and read them there.
We'll do questions at the end. I've given myself a moment
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lady Asta.
someone uses like a, like in this world it's also like alphabet. So like if Mike says something,
How was your trip? Good.
Just really basic.
Good.
Make sure that anybody who asks a question can hear and has to go to the mic.
I ran into a lady down the stage.
Good. Because she had asked about you several times.
Behind me and I thought, and turned around and it was her. So she's assuaged. She feels better. So that's good. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
How long were you gone?
2 glorious weeks.
Nice.
Came back from Vienna.
Oh, wow. Oh. Wonderful.
If there's anything, does anybody need anything? Let's see if you've got beverages and anything.
No, thank you.
Okay, this is going to sound like a very bizarre question. Do we have any chairs without arms? Because I feel like I'll probably bump into the chair arm and it looks small for a person. Maybe I'll stick with this one. I just don't want.
You were
I
there.
wanna
Look at
spill
that.
my
I love
coffee
it.
Or do the awkward things I normally do.
With Beethoven. Yeah, I love that.
There's the proof.
Oh, how awesome! Wonderful. Sounds like a fabulous trip.
All right.
It was.
All right. I think y'all ready?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let's do this.
Ready? All right. That sounds pretty good.
Do not worry about it. It is no problem.
All right.
You want to be comfortable if you're going to be in front of a group for
Yeah, we'll be here for a little while.
It doesn't worry about
Well, I could just sit my coffee down and then it wouldn't be an issue.
All right.
Heidi, you were too sweet. Don't worry about it.
Are we
It's
ready?
not a problem. I'm big boy.
All right. Good morning, everybody. If you are with us in the Great Hall, we are glad to see you. If you are with us online, we are also glad that you are joining us for this panel discussion this morning. This morning we're going to be talking about LGBTQIA plus in faith, a topic that has become relevant again in news. Before we introduce the panel, I just want to go through a little brief, super high-level history of how we got to where we are in the Episcopal Church. I was in a group text with some friends across the country. Some are Methodist clergy, some are Lutheran clergy. And I was talking about doing this panel, and they said, in the Episcopal Church, what do y'all have to talk about? And so we actually still have dioceses that, in churches in which they would not call or would not ordain someone that is transgendered or openly gay or bisexual. But just a brief history, I think, so that we understand where we've been and kind of understand where we're going. So we'll start in 1974. Louis Crew founded Integrity USA, which was a nonprofit organization that advocated for the full inclusion of all LGBTQ persons within the Episcopal Church. 2 years later, the General Convention added two resolutions that said homosexual persons are children of God who have full and equal claim with all other persons upon the love, acceptance, and pastoral concern and care of the church, and another that said they are entitled to equal protection of the laws with all other citizens. In 1988, the National Episcopal AIDS Coalition was founded in order to help provide information and support to congregations and parishes and dioceses that were providing care and support in that crisis. Also in the 80s, here in Memphis, a group of gay and straight allies joined together to create the first Integrity Memphis chapter. They met at the Barth House, but that did not last long as a diocesan ministry. Actually, Bishop Alex Dixon declared that no such organization would exist within his diocese. But thankfully, Doug Bailey, the rector of Calvary, welcomed and opened Calvary as its home. And so that's kind of the foundation of where we are now. We go to 94, General Convention amended the church canons to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation, providing equal access to the rights and worships of the Episcopal Church, including ordination. In 2003, the Diocese of New Hampshire elected the first openly gay bishop, installing the Reverend Gene Robinson. In 2009, the General Convention acknowledged and affirmed same-sex couples in the life of the church. That's also the first year that Trans Episcopal, a group dedicated to fostering the full embrace of trans and non-binary people in the life and worship of the Episcopal Church, sent the first delegation to General Convention. In 2012, the General Convention called for the repeal of the discriminatory federal laws, increased legal protections for domestic partners, and recommended a liturgy for the blessing of relationships of same-sex couples. The canons of the Episcopal Church that year were also amended to prohibit discrimination in the ordination process based on gender identity and gender expression. In 2015, only 5 days after the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage, the General Convention voted to amend the canons of the Episcopal Church that regulates marriage, permitting any couple the right of holy matrimony. And they also called for a name change right to honor an important moment in the lives of anyone claiming their true identity. So in a world where LGBTQIA plus rights are frequently and constantly being challenged, attacked in local, state, federal courts and legislatures, the need for a safe space for those in that community became a necessity. So GLEE, Gay and Lesbian Everyday Episcopalians, is actually a revival ministry here at Calvary. And the purpose of GLEE is to provide an affirming, inclusive, welcoming, and hospitable environment for Calvary's LGBTQIA+ community to address and discuss common concerns of LGBTQ+ Christians, explore ways of being community both within our own group and as part of the parish as a whole, to participate fully in all aspects of the life of the church, and to assist the parish in accomplishing its common mission and goals. So kind of as a kickoff, we've decided that it was important to have a panel discussion talking about this. So I'm going to sit down and stop talking. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. We will do some questions with them. We'll then open up the floor for you to have questions. If you have a question when we get to that portion this morning, if you'll just go to the microphone in the center of the room, ask your question. If you're watching live stream, just throw your question into the chat, and Heidi will make sure we get it shared in the room. So with that, I'll let the panel introduce themselves.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Jonathan Ely, and I'm a native Memphian. And for a while, I served on the board of Out Memphis, which was formerly known as the Memphis Gay and Lesbian Community Center. Served 4 years, and of those 4 years, 3 years, I was chairman of the board. Was fortunate enough to have been Grand Marshal for the Pride Parade, and just a lot of great opportunities to connect with those in our community. I always have to pay homage to Vincent Asher whenever we're together, just because without him, there would be no me. So yeah, I just want to say hi, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Clay Wemmel. I know many of you in the room as a longtime Calvary parishioner. A little bit about my background. I've worked in higher education for over 25 years. Most of that time, I've been a counselor and done, a variety of different things: academic, career, mental health. I've also been a faculty member and university administrator. I'm originally from Southeast Missouri. I came to Memphis in 1997 and to Calvary shortly thereafter. And I would say that Calvary for me has been an example of that inclusive community. I've had the opportunity to do many things here, for which I'm most grateful: usher, Eucharistic minister, greeter, altar guild, vestry, strategic planning. Those are a few that I remember in this moment. So I think that Calvary has been very instrumental in my development as a Christian person, and so I'm really glad to have the opportunity to be here today.
Good morning. My name is Ashton Anderson, and I am born and raised Savannah, Georgia. Got to Memphis about 6 years ago, been at Calvary 5.5 of those years. I had only recently discovered the Episcopal Church about 2 years before I moved to Memphis. It literally saved my life. I don't think I knew what inclusive community was until I found the Episcopal Church. I'm the Director of Safety and Emergency Management at the Med, Regional 1. You guys know it at the Med. I know it is Regional 1. So I try to serve my community ever since I've been here, and I love Calvary and I love Memphis, so that's me.
All right, thank y'all. All right, first question for you. Whoever wants to jump in at first. Why do you think it's important to have a group that's dedicated to individuals who identify as LGBTQIA+, and not for allies and the community?
I'll take it. So I think if you're coming from a background where you are not being told that you are okay, or you're coming from a background where you're expressly being told you are not okay as a gay person in the world, you can't just tell your story to anybody. You can't, even if your church says we're inclusive, or you give the impression of being inclusive, you as a gay person who is struggling to find your identity or find your community or accept yourself, you really need to have some type of open layer of trust from the start. So when you have a group dedicated to these issues, I would know that I can trust at least being myself with that group. And if that group wasn't for me or whatever, that's one thing. But I'm not going into a hostile environment off the top. So, because you don't know who's struggling, you don't know what their struggles are with your sexual identity or orientation, and it can be a life-saving group. Because the internal struggle can be difficult. So that's why I think it's important to have a dedicated, safe space.
Yeah, and I would echo that, particularly from a professional standpoint as well as a faith standpoint. I mean, I think there's a lot of research that would demonstrate that when people have the opportunity to be in that supportive community, they do much better. But then I think, the other part of that is it's also very important to have allies outside that group and for everyone to work together. So I think that, both things are very important and have been important in my own life. I know originally growing up in a small town in a church that was not particularly affirming, that's something when I went to college that I sought out. And so it is, I think, especially in the beginning, but at a variety of different points through life, important to have that touchstone.
Got anything, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think what they said is totally the epitome of the question, yeah.
Perfect. All right, so how do you reconcile your sexuality and your faith? And I throw that out there. Growing up Baptist, you're kind of told that's a sin, you can't do it, but how do you, or what's been the journey that you've gotten to where you can reconcile that faith in your sexuality?
I think for me, it's really odd that people say, Jesus is love and God loves everybody, but you. So it's just that question of how can he love everybody but me? So the way I reconcile it is that, there's one interpretation and there is another, and everyone's interpretation is different. And I believe that to be like Christ is to truly love everyone and to truly help everyone whatever you can, however you can. The scripture says that, when you do the least of these, for the least of these, you do that for me. And I feel like, when there's an opportunity to expand and to exist in a world where we all can just be that way, it would just be really, really awesome. But how I reconcile that kind of with my faith is that, it's more so maybe kind of sort of on a Pollyanna kind of thing where everybody will one day get together and hold hands. It will be just a great place to live and everyone will be accepted and loved and whatever. But I do realize that, we have yet to get to that point and we have very much further to go. But in my head, it makes a lot more sense, and it helps me to be a better person every day and the day before. Like my simple prayer is that I am a better person tomorrow than I am today. And if that is helping my fellow man, learning more about myself, helping to reconcile, like you said, my faith and my normal walk with, life, yeah, it's totally kind of what I do.
So I originally, as a child, grew up in the Lutheran Church, and so I was very fortunate to have a supportive family. And so while there were certainly times, I had a friend from elementary school recently say to me, "Oh, I can't believe, you left the Lutheran Church all these, probably 35 years ago." And I said, well, I kind of felt like it left me. So I think my point is because I had supportive family and supportive allies, I always felt a very strong sense of connection to God, and so even when the church left me, I always felt that God was present. That wasn't always a pleasant experience. I mean, I don't mean to gloss over it like it was easy, but I always had, I think of sin as sort of separation from God, but yet in those challenging times, I always felt that God was present, even if the church was not, and so that's probably, I think, what was helpful to me.
So I think, and to echo what he just said about, I don't want to gloss over it like it's easy. I mean, this was a several-year process, and then you kind of condense it into like 4 minutes, and it doesn't really express the turmoil of your internal struggle. So I'll just go ahead and put that. It was not a good time trying to reconcile my faith and sexual orientation. But when I found the Episcopal Church, that I was kind of mentored by an older a guy. He was an old university professor. He actually taught my sister in college, and he was great, and he was gay. And we were having a conversation, and he was like, and I was telling him, oh, da 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 da. And he was like, well, and to preface this, growing up in a Southern Baptist evangelical church, hell is a big motivational factor. Everything is hell. Every sermon is hell. Your vacation Bible school is hell. Your Sunday school, hell. We're all going to hell. You're going to be doing a really good job to get out of hell. Hell is happening. So I'm coming at it from that point of view, right? My only goal is I'm going to hell. Oh my God. So he was like, you're in hell now. This, what you're feeling and experiencing, lack of acceptance of yourself, lack of community, that is hell. You're in hell. We've got to get you out of the hell. And what you think is hell is probably not even going to happen. Yes. So, and after I had that conversation, I sat with that, I felt a burden off of me. And then I used kind of some old Southern Baptist rhetoric on my own self about fruits of the Spirit. So if I'm not accepting of myself and I'm, shying away from church, shying away from people, I'm living in fear, doubt, all these things, those are not great fruits of the Spirit. That must mean that my relationship with my Creator isn't going to His plan or her plan, whatever. But then now after I've changed my mindset about that, and now I'm full of love and grace, and now I'm going to get emotional. Those are much better fruits of the Spirit. So that helped me. Oh, okay. So really, some of that Southern Baptist mumbo-jumbo actually got me out of that theology, because I recognized that my fruits of the Spirit changed like that. And I was active in church, and I loved the church, and I wanted to serve my community, and I was full of love and grace. So that's how I ended up reconciling.
All right, thank y'all. So the church, the universal church, has done a lot of harm to a lot of groups, especially to the gay and lesbian community. What do you think can be done to start repairing some of that past harm?
I think situations just like this, where there are people who are willing to listen and willing to learn and have open hearts and open minds and are willing to be a part of the change that we necessarily need to see. So I applaud you all for being here. Thank you so much, both in person and virtually. Just because, until the majority decides that it's a thing, the minority will never be able to truly process. And in the speaking of like minorities in the sense of gay versus straight, if we don't have allies, then it's, a very, very pointless kind of situation in a lot of places. We need people to stand with us when there become those slate of hate bills that were coming down from a Tennessee legislator. When there are these, odd rules and regulations that only affect half of 1/3 of the country or the citizens. So like I said, I thank you guys for being here and being open and being willing and able to have this conversation, no matter how difficult it might be for either side, but just leaving this, pathway of communication open.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that allies are incredibly important. Growing up in a small town, I did not know a lot of other LGBTQ persons, and so having that support from people, I think, was crucially important. And I think, continuing that, certainly in that regard, Calvary started on a path decades ago toward more inclusion, and I think continuing that continues to be important. And I'll stop there because I think you said it very well.
I think that kind of an education about that, the term and the reality of religious trauma, that, it's one thing, we're dealing with our sexual identity or orientation, or, the church hurt us, or, the church hurt a group of people. And that is, I don't think, is enough. I don't think that really states that, that the religious trauma that can occur when you're a child in certain environments and well, I was raised this way, I didn't really believe it, or I was raised this way. What if you really believed? You were a real believer in some toxic theology, and you were indoctrinated. And that's a lot to leave. It's a lot to change. It's a lot to internalize the new belief system, to abandon old belief systems. And I think that, talking about it like it's religious trauma and not just a hurt that occurred. And this is really kind of a synchronicity here. I've had several conversations recently with my girlfriend. I have religious trauma. She does not. She did not grow up in a household that believed certain things. She didn't grow up in a, strict theological household, whatever. So the things that I'm talking about, she's like, I'm aware kind of that occurs, but that is just so foreign to me. And I think that's the gap, that it is a religious trauma, and it's not just kind of a hurt that we kind of have to pat and now we're fine. Like, there's some deeply traumatized people. And if that's not something that's your experience, it's so foreign that I think that just like this, having a group where we're talking about it and educating about it can do a lot of good.
So, next month in October will be National Coming Out Day. So the idea of wanting to do a panel about this came about by wanting to be close to that National Coming Out Day. For me, I decided, for people that know me, I'm pretty stubborn, so I never felt the need to come out. I just showed up with a boyfriend at dinner one time in college. Surprise, right? My younger brother, who's also gay, wrote a 3-page handwritten letter and left on my mother's pillow coming out. He loves the dramatics, and that is him to a T, and I love him, but we went just in the same household. We took very different ideas of that, because my older sister, who's straight, never had to come out and say she likes boys, so why did I need to come out? But this is a big part of our community, is that we are... we've been told to live in the closet, or to stay outside of mainstream, or don't hold hands with your partner as you walk. So coming out's a big deal, right? So when you came out, and you don't have to tell your story, but when you came out, what was the reaction that you received from your friends and family? And what's the reaction that you wish you would have gotten, I think?
So for me, part of this is having to tell the story. So I made the decision in my mid-20s to come out to my mother. Single parent at the time. I had just finished college. I moved back home while I was trying to figure out what my next steps were going to be. And like I said, had this moment in college and realized this is who I am and this is what I point to be. And one night, a friend of mine was just kind of like, why are you waiting? Just do what you need to do. So prior to this whole coming out thing, because I wasn't sure how she would respond, I had already like saved enough money to be able to stay a month at a hotel or find some place to like, couch surf or whatever. I had already packed several bags in the trunk of my car so that should, like I said, it had gone really, really south, I would be ready to go. So we're in the same house one evening, and she is in one room, and I am in another room, and I decide to send in her email. I did. Yeah, I sent her an email, and I mean, I just like kind of just started typing and just did not stop. So, your brother with the flair for the dramatic, I get it, because sometimes that's what you need to do. I didn't expect her to read it as quickly as she did. But of course, I, had already been prepared with my statistics and facts and figures and things to, kind of brace for this conversation. And all she said to me was, it's okay, and you'll forever be my son, and I love you. And when I got engaged, she was super excited, and when I got married, she was even more excited. So I think the coming out process is very, very important to people. What people don't necessarily understand is that gay people almost come out every day. There's not a situation where it's like, oh, wait, like they just know. So I may preference my husband, and someone will go, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, total gay, but whatever. But I say that to say that the coming out experience is not just one time. It is something that is multifaceted, and I'm sure my panelists can definitely attest to that as well.
Yeah, gosh, I guess mine was sort of all over the place, versions of some aspects of both of your stories. So I came out initially during college. I told a couple of my friends, both of whom were straight, and they were actually very supportive. I told my parents, they were supportive. Some of my extended, I guess I would say that you never know what you're going to get, because in terms of my extended family, some people I anticipated would have been supportive were not. And some people who I thought would not take it well were fine. And then there was the time that I just showed up to a dinner with one of my high school friends with Brooks in tow and was like, oh, here we are. So I guess I've done, like some version of all of that. I did do that in Atlanta. I wasn't quite gutsy enough to do that in Memphis or Cape Girardeau, yeah, so I guess kind of all over the place. Certainly there were people who didn't respond well, but there were also people who responded very well. So it was kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. So the first time that I ever actually verbalized that I was gay to another human being, it was he is still one of my best friends. We grew up together, best friends all throughout grade school and college. But we were in college, freshmen, and we were doing what college freshmen do, having a couple of drinks, and it kind of started out with, I'm kind of curious, I don't know. And then it started out, well, maybe I might be bisexual, I don't know. And then it was like, we're both gay, everybody's gay. Like, as the drinks went on, we were being more and more honest. And then once that happened, you got that experience of like, I am gay. That first verbal speaking of it into existence, it just breaks the seal, it breaks the whatever you need it, and then it becomes, okay, this is a real thing that's happening, and now what is the next steps in terms of who else gets to hear this kind of, this statement. And I just kind of just was like, to my friends, I was like, hey, I think I'm gay, and they were like, yeah, you are. So, there was not a lot of shock and awe with me coming out.
Surprisingly, I was the same way.
Yeah.
Yes, it was not particularly shocking to my two friends that I told. They, I think, knew it long before I did in some regards, and I had forgotten about the whole bisexual thing, but I think I'm 50, particularly people of my age, you know, that was sort of the first thing you said, because you sort of thought, well, if this doesn't go well, I could sort of, you know, at least pretend to go back. So the sort of, there are a lot of people of my age who, you know, initially said bisexual before they went all the way gay.
And there are people who are genuinely bisexual, and I think that the people that, like myself, that are gay and take that stepping stone, probably give them a bad rap. They're like, could y'all just come out and don't use our term, because we really are bisexual. Another thing that I did, well, it was kind of a thing in college, that you could be the gayest person on campus, walk around holding your partner's hand, but if you hadn't told your parents or your grandma, you were not out. And I never actually told my dad. And he passed away in 2019. I was out. I was living out. My friends knew. I was at work out, having those conversations, those subtle coming outs, like my girlfriend or, you know, whatever. Now it's a lot less subtle. I went to school at Georgia Southern University, and I've got a rainbow Georgia Southern flag in my office. So when you come into my office, I'm like, hello. Before we even get anywhere, just know that.
Exactly.
But he asked my sister, I just couldn't do it. I just could not do it. And he never asked, you know, don't ask, don't tell. And he would even, I had a terrible heartbreak one time, and, you know, I was talking to him, you know, about this friend, and, you know, he was like, he said, you know, she's really pretty, but she doesn't have any ambition, she's not for you. He knew, but we didn't talk. And then he was like, I gotta go. And then he hung up, and then like 2 weeks later, he texted me, have you got your oil changed? So, you know, we weren't gonna have a conversation about it. That was not gonna happen, but he knew, we all know, we all knew. But I wish that I would have actually, you know, before he passed, told him to let him have a more full picture of how I was living my life and the people in my life. But yeah, so that's my kind of weird little coming out. And one more coming out, my stepmother, God bless her, she's hard of hearing, but after my dad died, you know, I was like, let me tell her, you know, I'll bring partners home and do it the right way. So I'm like, mid-30s on this front porch out on this farm, and she can barely hear, and I'm like, I'm gay. And she's like, do what? I'm like, I'm gay. So that was a surreal coming out at 35. And she was like, I had no idea. So it's interesting. Coming out's just a joyride your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
I'm glad y'all brought up that every day you have to reemerge.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone struggling to know how to respond or to accept a family member or a friend that's just come out to them?
The easiest thing to say is they were the same person before they told you. So when I emailed my mom, I was still the same 27-year-old son who was, you know, her child and had just finished college and was looking for other opportunities. It was just another facet of who I am, but it didn't change who I was. And I think for many people that's important to remember, because while your perception and while the information that you've received changes, the person itself still remains the same.
I would just say, have empathy. You know, I think that sometimes people are afraid that they'll say the wrong thing or they won't get it right. And I would say if you have empathy, if you act with good intent, even if you don't get every word right, people will understand that. So don't be afraid to have the conversation or show the person your support.
Yeah, and I would say that if you're being told, if a coming out is happening to you, or you're being told about some type of, you know, gay issue, you're in the process of being trusted. Like, that person is saying, I trust you, I trust your opinion, I love you, you know, it's a positive thing from that person to be sharing that with you. So if you're coming from the same position of, well, I also care about you and I also trust you, your reaction will probably be okay, even if it's, you know, messy or sloppy, or I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. They trust you. You probably care about them too. It'll be okay, whatever you say.
So, in the past decade in Tennessee, there have been lots of laws written and passed that specifically target LGBTQIA plus individuals. From most recently, the allowing adoption agencies to prevent same-sex couples from adopting is now law here. The bathroom and gender identity bills that have gone into place, the Don't Say Gay, your parents have opt-out for no gay curriculum in your school classrooms. I'm probably missing a lot of them, actually. As members of the community, every time we hit one of those losses of rights, what's your gut reaction to that? And I think one of the questions I get a lot too from my straight friends are, what can we do? Go for it.
You know, I guess I think, I mean, it is sad, it is unfortunate, it doesn't surprise me. It's in some ways not that different from my home state of Missouri, which has also taken sort of a severe turn in that direction. And I guess in some ways it is not limited to LGBTQI persons. I mean, certainly government bodies act in discriminatory ways against people of color, against women, against all manner of persons. And so, you know, I think it's also important, at least from a, gosh, usually I'm loud enough on my own, but I think it's also important to join together with other persons, because if we want to change things, then it is important to work to make things more just for everyone, whomever they may be.
This is a light question in comparison. It was a joke. You know, I honestly, every time that I hear another one or a new one, I'm just like, you know, I don't know what it is going to require to convince people that we are all the same. And I don't know what that education looks like, that argument, that conversation looks like, but it's not getting through. And I think that just having conversations like these in general, just kind of spreading like the awareness that it's not just, you know, we're real people. You know, again, I don't want to say anything extremist because I feel extreme about it, but we're all the same people. I don't understand why that is such a difficult concept, why we feel the need to you know, I say we, I'm not supposed to say that, but I don't know, I don't have an answer. I'm going to have to take a pass on this one, because if I knew what to do, I would be doing more of it. You know, I don't know, I'm bewildered by people on a daily basis, so.
I think that's real. One last question before we open it up. In 2010, in response to a lot of things happening, a national campaign launched, It Gets Better, to try to give hope to the LGBTQ plus community, and to provide support for those struggling with coming out, or should they come out. Have you found it in your life, and most recently in your the last couple of years, have you found it to be true that it gets better? What advice would you give to a high school or college student that's might be in the thick of of experiencing their sexuality, wrestling with their sexuality at that time of their life.
So, just to kind of expound on a little bit of the history, the Trevor Project was the creators of the It Gets Better Project. And basically in 2010, there were these stories of kids, literally like people that were under 18, just 18, gay, who were killing themselves. And one of the people most prominently known was Tyler Clementi. He was the student at the university where his roommate decided to set up the computer camera in a way that captured Tyler having an intimate moment with another man. And when it was found out, Tyler jumped off of a bridge. But we talked to people about how it gets better, and the idea was you'd make a commercial, you'd make a video. It could be as long or as short as you wanted it to be, and it was supposed to be a comforting thing for older gays to tell younger gays, you know, I've been where you are, I've seen what you've seen, I felt what you felt, but it gets better. And to me, watching them, you know, at that time, was very profound in my life. Like I said, I was still trying to, even having just come out myself and was like immersed in gay culture and everything. It was still nice to be able to hear that there were people who had experienced the same thing that I had, who had made it through it, and were able to say it does get better. I am a living testimony that it does get better. I also have to preface that by saying it wasn't really, really bad. So in order for it to get better, it was much better than I anticipated it being. But like I said, the program itself was very instrumental in helping people to talk about this experience. And you know, there were parts of religious trauma that were in that people said, you know, I was indoctrinated, I was sent to these camps, I was told that I was going to hell every day of the week. And I had to get past all of that. And I did it. And if you've been through that, you too can go through it. And you can make it on the other side. You just have to have strength and courage and wisdom and fortitude to know that greater is coming later.
Yeah, I would say things absolutely have gotten better. Have they gotten to where they should be? Probably not, but you know, I always keep working towards something more, but definitely from like the 1970s to 2021, things have definitely gotten better. I do think that was a very powerful campaign. It was meaningful to me, even though I was in my 40s when it came out. Certainly, you know, suicidality is a major concern in mental health for a variety of groups and for a variety of reasons, but LGBTQI people certainly have a much higher risk of suicide than other parts of the population. And so I think any messaging, you know, around sexual identity and mental health is very, very important.
Yeah, you know, it does get better. And, you know, my mentor that I had back in Georgia, who was kind of coaching me through this whole experience of reconciling and accepting myself, you know, he was in a place where, you know, his life was threatened, and he had to, you know, lots of trauma and traumatic experiences. And he never thought that gay marriage would be possible for him or legalized, you know, to live openly, and it is. And so I think empirically, and just like the history of the church, you know, you start from zero and then it progresses. So I think empirically you can see that it does get better at some type of legal, you know, acceptance, workplace standpoint. You know, we can't just be fired, that kind of thing. But then emotionally, on a personal level, it does get better. And you know, if I was going to say something, especially thinking about my own self and what you do struggle with or you go through, I would tell that younger person what you think that is just not possible, you know, is possible, just not today. You know, don't think that today is what it's going to be like in 5 years or 10 years. You're going to be a completely different person. Even if you're not gay, just people change year to year, decade to decade. Your life is a journey. So don't put everything on who you are right now, that your courage is only this small and your self-acceptance is this small and your knowledge of whatever is this. You change and you grow in every facet of your life, and your sexual identity and how you accept that is a part of it. So today is just today, tomorrow will be a different day, and you may have a completely different mindset on that day. So don't say to yourself at 18, well, I could never be married and I could never take my spouse home, or that's 18-year-old you. Give yourself some time and watch it change. Don't just be defeatist today. Because I said the same thing. I said I could never A, B, or C, and I took my girlfriend home in June and had a delightful time. So you just can't get bogged down in where you are now, and that's really advice for anything you go through. That is just right now. It's bad now, but it will get better. Everything passes and changes with life. So, yeah.
All right, so with that, we will open up the floor. If anybody has questions, if there are any online, if you have a question, you can come to the mic.
Hi, thanks for the panel. I recently saw a documentary on Netflix called Pray Away, and it's about gay conversion therapy, and the group Exodus was one of the groups that were doing this, and it started around the same time as Integrity in the mid-'70s. But the guy who started it, he was in an evangelical megachurch and had same-sex attraction that he was concerned about, and he thought maybe other people did too, so he started the group. And so over the years, these people, a lot of the people in the groups decided this was really not working. This was not a good idea, and I think Exodus has now folded. But a lot of the people who left the ex-gay movement felt like they were traumatized in a religious context, and it was important to also have healing in a religious context. And I think that's what the Episcopal Church offers. But my question is, how do you think we can reach out to some of the people? There still are these conversion therapy organizations still going on. How can we reach out to people who might have been raised evangelical, that had this religious indoctrination, that might need to know there's a church that would be accepting and healing for them?
I think meeting them where they are is probably the best way to consider this. The church means well. They want to do well. But if you walk up to someone who has experienced such trauma and you start telling them about your church and what you guys do and how open and affirming you are, you just sound like the exact same people that they had, indoctrinating them, telling them that this was the right way and this is how they should live and this is where they should go. I believe that, just doing exactly what you're doing now, not posturing for a specific type of thing, but truly seeking knowledge on how to exist as a community, will bring those people in, and they will want to learn more about the organization, not necessarily because you've told them about it, but you've shown them who you are and what you are about.
Yeah, the reason that I did not even know what the Episcopal Church was. I had no idea. And somebody in my class in college just was my friend, kind of just in class and studying or whatever. So she knew me generally and just said, you would probably like Trinity Episcopal Church. Just that. There was no posturing about what they did. She was like, you probably would like it. I think you should check it out. And just left it. And I was like, well, she knows ABC, and I know that she's ABC. Let me go check it out. Changed my life. So you'd be surprised, in that trust, if I know you, and you know me, so I'm going to give you this little nugget and then let you take it. And it can go a long way.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything everyone has said. You know, I'm reminded when I think when I was on the vestry one year, we had a theme that was One Calvary. And so I think it's important to have groups that meet the needs of different individuals, yet at the same time, having that whole community is also very important, that coming together. And so sometimes I absolutely agree, it's in what people see more than what is said or even special things that are done. So I think that's, you know, I was in graduate school with someone who was like, oh, you should come to Calvary with me for a Lenten preaching series. I think you would like it. You know, and having known several people who were Episcopalian who had been supportive of me, and, you know, having been to other Episcopal churches, I was like, yeah, I'll go. I was new to Memphis at that time. And so I think it's, for me at least, it was a feeling that I got more than anything specific.
Good morning. Just want to relay that there's a lot of thank yous and appreciation for you online from the folks who are watching at home. Thank you for sharing your stories, and from me too, in person. Leanne has a question. Her gay friend was ostracized from an Episcopal church in Florida, and he had to find an accepting parish. Did any of you have an experience similar to this within the Episcopal Church before you found Calvary? And it sounded like some of you kind of just dropped in seamlessly, but was there any more to that, or was it really that easy?
I mean, certainly, I think, you know, looking back historically and what Zach said earlier about one of our former bishops and so forth, I mean, certainly in West Tennessee, there were some congregations who were more accepting than others. There were some who were more vocal about being accepting. There were some who were not accepting at that time. West Tennessee has come a very long way, as has the Diocese of Missouri. So I guess I've visited a number of different Episcopal churches, and I mean, I'm generally not the sort of person to go where I'm not welcome. So if something didn't seem a good fit for me, I just kept moving. I did have, funny story, I did have a person at another Episcopal parish in Memphis sort of size me up and say, oh, I think you'd really be a good fit for Calvary. I mean, this was like 25 years ago, so no, I've never had an overtly negative experience, but I certainly know that there are people who have, particularly, you know, in that period of time when the church was sort of going through a transition in how it thought about sexuality.
So I think we have time for one quick question. If we have a quick question, I'm going to time limit the panel since we're at the end. So if there's one question, I think we got one coming.
Mine is not exactly a question, but I just wanted to say that Ted and I have had the pleasure and the honor to have been witnesses for two gay weddings. One was a couple of women and the other was a couple of men. One was in a community park and the other was on the beach. It was just such a privilege to be asked that, but at the conclusion of the service, they turned around and looked at us and said, this is where we usually kiss. Are you comfortable with that? And it really just broke my heart that they had to ask permission to show their love for one another. We all do that without any shame at all. And so I just wondered, what is your take on that? We said, of course, kiss, you know, it's your day. But
Well, I've been married since October of 2019. And originally we had planned a October 2020 wedding and decided, I had a cousin who was like a sister to me who passed away. And we decided in August of 2019 that we would plan this really quick elopement thing. We invited 15 people, and it was on the bluffs of the Mississippi, and you know, we had a minister there, and my best friends were there, our parents were there, you know, and then like select friends and things like that. When she said you may kiss your husband, we went for it. I mean, I think we anticipated that people understood what might happen at a gay wedding, but like, yeah, there would be some sort of sealed with a kiss moment. But I understand what you're saying. But we ourselves, he and my husband and I, you know, we live unapologetically, and we feel like that is probably the best way to be, because if you're always asking for permission, then you're not really living, you know, in a way. And in order to make the conversation kind of go further even, you have to, you know, sometimes push that limit. And it may have made somebody in the audience uncomfortable, but I got married and I love him. And like, I wanted to show that in that moment. And it's really funny because in my office, just like Ashley was talking about, I have photographs of our wedding. And, you know, there's a picture of us in the kiss, and then there's one of us kind of at a cocktail reception where we were just having a really great time laughing. And I had a client come by and go, "Oh, you are married?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm married." And he was just like, "So is it the same as everything else?" I'm like, of course. We argue about money all the time. He thinks I buy too many pairs of shoes. I think he goes to Home Depot too much. So, you know. But I mean, like, just to say all that, you know, like, we are all truly the same in the end.
All right, anybody want to add anything for?
I did one thing. Visibility matters. So when I'm out, I'm holding my girlfriend's hand. I'm living unapologetically, because especially to that couple with their kids that are like, oh my God, one of their kids might be gay, and I'm sorry for the parents, they'll just have to deal with that journey. But if I would have saw more, you know, TV, movie, in-person stuff, I would have had a lot better time accepting myself. So when I hold my girlfriend's hand, I hope somebody does see it. I don't care. And, you know, it just is what it is. I grew up fully getting heterosexuality pushed in my face, still gay. So we're not going to change anybody by living unapologetic. A bunch of straight people keep having gay babies, so it'll be okay. You'll be okay. Everybody will get over seeing people hold their hands. It's fine.
Oh, well, let's see. Gosh, it'll be 23 years on December 23rd. And so we had a religious service in, you know, then, and then we were legally married at the San Francisco County Courthouse 10 years later when it became legal. So Brooks always says I'm not right because I was crazy enough to marry him twice. When the church authorized blessings, there were people at Calvary who thought we should do that too. If 2 weddings are in questionable taste, I think 3 would be in poor taste for sure. So we took a pass on that, but appreciated very much that people thought that that was something that we should do. So
we are at the end of our time. I want to thank our panelists. If we can give them a round of applause for joining us. I want to thank you for being with us this morning. We are blessed by your presence here today. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.